Hi, everybody. It's the Big Kahuna for Pat Miley for the Blue Collar Conservative video. Normally, I only do a MAGA Monday. Today's Thursday. Um, the reason I'm putting this up today is we got some people back. We should be very happy to get back three people who were held by the Russians. But what I want to point out is it's another shit deal by the Biden administration. Last year, Biden gave the Iranians $6 billion to get six prisoners back. 6 billion plus they unfroze assets that were held because of human rights violations and their terrorism record. Now, that was a bad deal because not only did that $6 billion, which was supposed to go to humanitarian aid, it went to funding Hezbollah and Hamas. That's why we have what's going on in Israel right now. That's why we got going on campuses. Who's funding the Iran is funding these acts of violence, these acts of essentially terrorism in our country. And not only that, they're flying the people around to protest. These so-called protesters are being flown around by Iran because the same faces are showing up in New York. They're showing up. A lot of these people that were down in Mar-a-Lago the other day were up in Philadelphia and up in New York. Same people. Same photographs. And this wasn't pointed out by the FBI or the Secret Service. It was pointed out by journalists from Fox and Newsmax who were showing pictures of the same assholes, Hamas holes. Now, getting to the other deals. We gave the merchant of death, an arms dealer who was responsible for thousands of deaths, away. We gave him back to Russia for a fucking basketball player, Brittany Griner. We gave away today. The Russians released 10 people from 4 countries, 3 people from the United States, and then people from Poland, Germany, and Slovenia that were being held. There are 7 Americans who are not as well known who are still in Russia, who are still in gulags in Russia. What's the Biden administration doing about them? Fuck them is what they're saying. Why didn't we get those other 7 back? Because they weren't high profile people like Aaron from the New York from the Wall Street Journal, the reporter from Wall Street Journal. It was a Marine, and there was another journalist. They were high profile people. They came back. The other 7, nobody knows who they are. Fuck them. That's how the Biden administration's acting. Now, we gave up 26 people who have bodies on them. Germany had a guy who murdered a man right in front of his child, a Russian hitman. We had a Russian hitman that we gave up. Now, the numbers right now are 26. There's other people who are saying it's as many as 32. 32 Russians for 3 Americans and 7 people from other countries. And this was brokered by a NATO country, but they're buddy with the Russians, and that was the Turkish President Erdogan. So this is the 3rd bad deal, and I think the Russians rushed this through because they didn't want to deal with Trump if Trump gets elected, when Trump gets elected. So this is another bad deal by the Bidens. Yeah. It's disgusting. Now, we'll be right back. Hey, y'all. I'd like to announce that the Blue Collar Conservative Videos has entered into an agreement, Black Rifle Coffee Company, to be the official coffee of the Blue Collar Conservative Videos. Now, Black Rifle Coffee Company is not woke like Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. Dunkin' Donuts recently told people for a Trump rally, sure, you could park on your lot, and then had a big laugh when those people went into the rally and they had their cars towed away. They thought it was real funny. They thought it was real funny dumping coffee in a drive-through on a Trump supporter. They thought that was real funny too. So don't go to Dunkin' Donuts. Then you got Starbucks. Don't go to Starbucks. They're anti-cop. They gave money to Black Lives Matter. Dunkin' has pronoun people working for them. So these two companies are so woke. Black Rifle Coffee Company is a company that started by veterans. It's owned and operated by veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. These guys are true patriots. Now, I've been a loyal customer of Black Rifle Coffee Company when it was only available by mail order. Now, I picked up this BRCC hat at Cabela's when I found that they were selling Black Rifle Coffee Company BRCC products. Then I started finding it at Walmart. Now, I have a BRCC outpost less than 5 miles from my home. There's 3 blends that I really like. There is a medium roast blend called 1776, the spirit of 1776. Very good blend. Then there's a more robust blend, like when I want to stay up, if I've got something going and want something with an extra kick. It's called the Blue Line blend. Then you got, because my doctor said I got to watch my caffeine intake because of my blood pressure, I buy JD, which is just decaf. These are the 3 blends that I really like, but they have blends for everybody. They have blends, and they don't just sell it in the K cups, which they call rounds. They got it in whole beans. They got it in ground. If you're like a guy like Leroy Jethro Gibbs on NCIS, a lot of people like to grind their own. A lot of people take little grinders with them when they travel and grind their own beans. And that's okay because they have them in whole beans and grinds and K cups. It's a great patriotic company that loves veterans, gives discounts to veterans and law enforcement. I'm retired law enforcement and I get a discount. So these are the kind of people you want to buy your coffee from and not the woke companies. So we fully endorse Black Rifle Coffee Company. So thank you very much. Stay safe and God bless. All right. Let's talk foreign policy right now. The border. Kamal is saying that she was not, and the media has been saying she is not responsible. She was not responsible for the border, even though prior statements made by Biden was that he was putting her in charge of the border. All right, now she was in charge of the border, and the root causes of the mass immigration, the mass illegal immigration into our country, where we've received between 11 and 13 illegal aliens. A lot of them flown directly to cities around the country. We are getting an influx of them here in South Carolina that are being flown into Charlotte. Now, they're in North Carolina, and they're getting bussed by NGOs to the Horry County and Georgetown County areas by NGOs. The Catholic Charities is one of them. They're busing them and dropping them off at St. Michael's Church down here. And then they're going from further, they're getting disseminated around the area. We have 2 families in my apartment complex that are living here on money from the NGOs. Now I'm paying $2,000 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment, and they're sticking people as many as 10 in a 2-bedroom. I got 4 people in a 3-bedroom. Me and my wife and my son and his wife are sharing a 3-bedroom apartment, and it's comfortable. Beautiful luxury apartment. 3rd bedroom is my office here. Now, I'm paying $2,000, and these people are living here free on the dime of Catholic Charities or some other NGO. I think you all know what happened with me and my wife in 2011. We were hit head on by a drunken illegal alien. My wife is disabled from that, has nerve problems that were related to that accident. Man, Kamala has failed with this border. Now you might notice I've been giving love to a lot of my hats lately. This one here, God's Children Are Not for Sale, comes from a movie called The Sound of Freedom. And that movie pertained to a border agent who turned into a guy who was saving kids from human trafficking. It's a true story. Now, we are getting children trafficked into the United States and sold into the sex trade while our border is wide open. And that's squarely on camel toe. We get in fentanyl. 400,000 people since Biden took office. 400,000 people dead from fentanyl poisoning. A lot of people didn't even realize they were taking fentanyl because it was put into fake medication. They thought they were taking over-the-counter medicine or prescription medicine, and they ended up getting poisoned with fentanyl. This is a direct attack, as far as I'm concerned, by the Chinese and the Mexicans, because the agents to use to make fentanyl are being supplied to the Mexican cartels by the Chinese. So the Chinese are responsible for the deaths, and the Chinese and the Mexican drug cartels. And this is being allowed to go on because of our border policies. And who's in charge of our border policies? Kamal. That's who. So we are like I said, people are dying. What was the most common death to Americans by illegal aliens was DUIs, and the House of Representatives put forth a bill that would immediately detain and deport illegal aliens who were caught DUI, and the Senate has blocked that bill. It's sitting there in the Senate. And Democrats in the House of Representatives tried to block it. Now, like I said, this is the most common form of death by illegal aliens. People think it's like gang related, and there's a lot of gang related deaths. Gang warfare. Gang warfare is running rampant where I used to live up in Reading, Pennsylvania, because a lot of the people that the Biden planes flew into Reading Regional Airport were Venezuelans. So now you have Mexicans, Dominicans, who were the pre-existing illegal aliens, fighting against Venezuelan gangs and Honduran gangs. Now, Venezuela, they have that deadly Trende de Agua, whatever, however you pronounce this shit. And our people are suffering for it. Now, another thing we're suffering for is the fraud that the Democrats are trying to do with our elections. Now, back when Ed Rendell was governor of Pennsylvania, he started allowing illegal aliens to receive non-driver IDs. Now, where they take these non-driver ID pictures to get the IDs is at the Department of Motor Vehicles, the PennDOT, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Now, when you get your ID photo, something comes up on the screen pertaining to registering to vote. It's called the Motor Voter Program. And illegal aliens were registering to vote illegally in Pennsylvania. And at one time, the count was 200,000. 200,000. This was before the 2020 election. And these were numbers coming from an auditor general that was during, I forget the guy's name. He was a Republican governor, a one-term wonder, and it was his auditor general. Then you got the Wolf administration, and the Wolf administration's auditor general only removed 11,000 of the 200,000 people at the time. Then more people came along. Then it was discovered that illegal aliens were not only obtaining driver's license in Pennsylvania, but commercial driver's licenses illegally. So you had illegal aliens driving tractor trailers with a Pennsylvania commercial driver's license who were not legally in the country. Now, it's estimated now that it could be as many as 400,000 people that are not legally in the United States are registered to vote in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And that's not the end of the corruption in Pennsylvania with election fraud. We had people elected, when I lived in Pennsylvania, that were elected to office through voter fraud and had to be removed. These were Democrats that had to be removed through the courts and replaced by their Republican counterparts who were defrauded. That's just the tip of the iceberg, because these other incidents. There was a man named Michael Ozzie Myers who was he was caught up in the Abscam scandal. If people are old enough to remember that, you had FBI agents that pretended to be Muslim people from Saudi Arabia that were bribing and lawmakers. They got a guy who was from the Immigration and Naturalization Service. That's what it was called back then. They got congressmen. They got John Jenneret here in South Carolina. Got a whole bunch of people. They got this guy named Bud Dwyer. Bud Dwyer was due to be sentenced, and he had a press conference the day before, and he killed himself on live television, blew his fucking brains out on live television. But then you had this guy, Michael Ozzie Myers, and he went to prison for 8 years. And when he came out, Ed Rendell was still mayor of Philadelphia. And Ed Rendell is the slimiest. They called him America's mayor when he was mayor of Philadelphia. He was the slimiest douchebag there ever was, because he gave a job to this convicted felon working in the warehouse where they stored the voting machines. Well, guess what he did? He started a ballot stuffing program for decades, and with the elections. And Philadelphia along with Detroit, was known for having the most crooked elections in America. They had more votes cast in some areas of the city than they had registered voters, over by the amount of 10%. So they were at 110% voting during elections that had low turnouts. There were parts of the city that were 110%. And nothing was being done about it. Nothing was being investigated about it until Trump was in office. And Trump, he had one AUSA, Assistant United States Attorney, an Assistant United States Attorney who cleared house. He busted a congressman, a corrupt congressman named Shaka Fatah. He busted his son, who was the head of the school board. He busted state legislators. He busted mayors. The mayor of Reading was caught up in that. The city council president of Reading and the president of the Reading School Board, who happened to be married to the city council president, and the city council president's cousin, who was a state legislator at the time. So you had three members of the Acosta family that got busted. You had city councilmen, union representatives, you name it, all Democrats busted by this AUSA, this Assistant United States Attorney, during the Trump administration. And the one guy he busted just a few days after the primary election 2020 was Michael Ozzie Myers. Now, he was only charged with this election fraud from 2014 to 2016. But they were still investigating him at the time. And a few weeks after he got busted, it was discovered by the feds and the city devices that were used to calibrate voting machines, tablets, and software on flash drives disappeared from that warehouse that Ozzie Myers worked in. And they were looking for that. They even raided the Philadelphia Electrical Workers office looking for evidence of the warrant said was about intimidating a witness, but they used that as a subterfuge to get in there to look for these devices, and they couldn't find them. Now, ironically, some stuff happened out in Allegheny County, where it seemed like more votes were cast in some precincts than people who voted. And the only way they could have done that was with those devices, but they were not recovered. And that cost the Republican Party not one, but 2 congressional seats. So this is the level of fraud just in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Plus, they had 2 areas in 2 counties that they just closed the polls while people were waiting in line. That was in Philadelphia and Delaware counties, that people were just denied the right to vote in the 2020 presidential election. That's called voter suppression. That's a crime. The Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department should have been looking into that. But the Biden administration's Civil Rights Division did nothing. In fact, they do nothing when people's rights are violated when they're white. There was some people in Philadelphia in predominantly white precincts that were being intimidated by members of the Black Panthers who stood outside the polling place with truncheons. And they had been doing this for years. They got convicted for voter intimidation by the Attorney General of the Bush administration. And Eric Holder and Barack Obama they overturned it. They used the executive branch to nullify these convictions. Now, another thing that's going on is we have people like Larry Krasner, who's the district attorney of Philadelphia. Larry Krasner and Kamala Harris and a number of other people, John Fetterman, they have been trying to commute the sentence of a murderer of a Philadelphia police officer named Mumia Abu Jamal. Back in the 1980s, he killed Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. I stood at the plaque of where Officer Faulkner was murdered. I went to that location a number of years ago when I lived up there, when I lived up in Pennsylvania. So I know, I've been to where Officer Faulkner was murdered. Being a retired police officer, this is a very sensitive subject for me. For years, liberals have been trying to get this guy out of prison. Whoopi Goldberg raised money for him, probably still raising money for him. Ted Danson, another one that was raising money for him. You name it. Danny Glover, all these liberal assholes had funded legal defense fund for Mumia Abu Jamal. And guess who else funded that? Kamala Harris. Kamala not only funded this, she started a fund to bail out the people who were destroying cities, causing billions of dollars worth of damage in the BLM riots. And at least two of those people that she helped bail out, that her fund that she started bailed out, ended up murdering people. So her policies, what she's after, that her lack of work on the border issue, just letting people run in, has been responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. Her immigration policy has caused the fentanyl crisis to expand exponentially. Her policies of getting people out of prison that were involved in the riots caused people's lives. Why is she a candidate for president? Because the Dems want to hold on to power. The Dems who preach that Trump is going to cause the end of our democracy, in fact, undermined our democracy by pushing Biden out of the race. They claim they want to save democracy, but a man who attained 14 million votes in the primaries is pushed aside for someone who never got a vote in either the 2020 or 2024 presidential race. Kamala Harris was not on the ballot. Joe Biden was. Kamala Harris joins the ballot at the convention, would have joined the ballot at the convention. J.D. Vance wasn't on the ballot. He joined the ballot at the convention. This is what people don't understand. So the only way she should have gotten those people, those delegates, and that campaign money is if Biden resigned. That's the only way legally. But the law doesn't matter when it comes to the Democrats. There's one standard for the Democrats and another standard for the Republicans. As we have seen so often, as the legal system has been used to target conservatives. The tax people, the IRS targeted Tea Party people, targeted them for audits. They targeted conservatives for audits. The Justice Department has been targeting conservatives for audits. January 6th, yes, there were some people who should have been arrested. I'm not arguing that point, but 1,000 people were arrested, and that is 0.5% of the 200,000 people that were at that event. 1,000 people were arrested, most of them on bullshit charges, which have since been overturned by the United States Supreme Court. Um, the this is what they claim is right wing expansive terrorism, but it's the left wing that has been conducting the terrorism. When you have over 500, close to 600 build large mansion riots here in the United States, who Kamala bailed out. You have the attempted assassination of the former president of the United States. You have the attempted assassination of a Supreme Court justice, the attempted assassination of Congressman Steve Scalise, the assassination of a Christian minister by a member of Antifa. This is what we are facing. Then you have the Iranian-funded riots and quote protests and property damage for Hamas on our college campuses. Recently in Washington, D.C., they were at the Republican convention, but they were contained by law enforcement at the Republican convention. You know, the Dems bring up Charlottesville. Charlottesville, there were no good guys there. Trump tried to morally equivocate things, and it bit him in the ass, but nobody said that they were both good people. Not Trump, not anybody, because there were no good guys at that incident, because the police had these 200 clowns contained in a park. They had a perimeter established around that park, and a bunch of counter protesters, that's what they call them, counter protesters, I call them assholes, were bussed in. And they breached that perimeter and started the violence, started the escalation of violence against these. So you had the Nazi assholes and the counter-protester assholes who continued this escalation of violence that ultimately resulted in the death of a young lady. Back to January 6th. The Dems claim that 5 people died in January 6th. 3 people died on January 6th. 2 of them were protesters. You had the young lady who was a veteran who was shot through the window by a disgraced police officer. Another young lady who was trampled to death. And then you had a police officer who died of his injuries. Not his injuries, a pre-existing health condition. He was in fact supposed to be on restricted duty because of his heart condition. And he came out and he had a heart attack. And that's a shame, but that's not what really happened. I mean, the Dems story isn't what really happened. They claimed he was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. He wasn't beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. Then they said he was beaten to death with a pepper mace canister. He was not beaten to death. He had a fucking heart attack. And they kept this story going and had him lie in state in the Capitol Rotunda, even though they knew he died of a heart attack. They were saying he was beaten to death. And this is a common thing that Democrats do with the people who died. Benghazi. There was the people who died in Benghazi were brought home to the National Mortuary. They were brought to Joint Base Andrews, and their bodies were put on, their caskets were put on, that wasn't even caskets, they were in what they call body cases, which is to keep the bodies from decomposing until they could get to the National Mortuary. They were put on display for a photo op for essentially a campaign speech by HRC. Then those body cases went to the family's mortuaries. None of these people were taken. You had a United States ambassador who should have been taken to the National Mortuary at Dover Air Force Base, as well as the other victims, because they were military people who retired and then went to work for the Central Intelligence Agency. They were Americans who died, who were murdered, and should have been given the honors that they deserved, and instead they were used for a photo op. I know I've been rambling for quite a while, nearly a half hour. I hope people watch this and learn from this. Stay safe. God bless you.